Awesome. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Sorry about the short delay on getting started. This is Wednesday, September 1st, and it's the CMAC meeting for the Citizens Multimodal Advisory Committee for RTC. And I am going to take roll call. And for the record, I'm Rebecca Capular. If anyone has any questions, just feel free to ask. And I'll just go down my list here. First, I have Laura Azam.
Here.
Hi, Laura. Jeff Bonanno.
Here.
Thank you. Matt Bogue.
Here.
Hi, Matt. Lindsay Costello. Salvador Duarte. Marjorie Ball.
Here.
Thank you, Marjorie. David Jackelman. David here. I know Vince is not going to be able to make it. Jillian Keller.
Here.
Hi, Jillian. Mayuko Magium. Mayuko here. Don't see. How about Paul Makowski? Sorry.
Close enough, Rebecca. Paul Malachowski is here.
Malachowski, thank you. I did practice before. Sorry about that.
Okay.
How about Dora Martinez? Hi, Dora. Thanks for the thumbs up. Benjamin Miller. And Mark Miranda.
Here.
Hi, Mark.
Hi.
Ann Silver.
Here.
Hi, Ann.
Hi.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I believe we have a quorum. Are there any members that I missed their name or came in late? Okay, well then let's go down our list and I'll introduce staff. As I mentioned, I'm Rebecca Capular with RTC, and we have Dan Dunges and Jackie Maldonado, and I think the small person in the very back is Mark Maloney in the back, and Leanne is back there too. Olivia, is there anybody else in the conference room that I missed? Oh, thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't see you back there. And then Dale Keller. And we also have, also from RTC, Tina Wu. And I think that's all the RTC staff. Did I miss anybody? Awesome. And then other guests, I'm seeing Phil Humphrey.
Morning. Good afternoon.
Feels like morning. And Maggie Ball would be Marjorie Ball. I've got Mark. Do you go by Maggie? Do you prefer that?
Yes, I do go by Maggie.
Okay, thank you. I'll make a note here. Sorry about that.
No problem.
And is there anybody else I missed? Awesome. Well, with that, we have a quorum and I'll hand it over to Chair Keller.
Everyone, thanks, Rebecca. You might have mentioned this and I didn't see it, but Alex Wolfson from NDOT is also here.
Thank you. Yes, Alex from NDOT. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Full house tonight. Okay, so it is 5:36 p.m. on September 1st, and I'll call the meeting to order. So first step is approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
A motion to approve the agenda. Ann Silver for the record.
Thank you, Anne. Can I get a second?
Laura Azam, second.
Thank you, Laura. So our agenda is approved, and I think some of us probably noticed we don't have minutes to approve. I'm guessing that we'll have those next month to review from the. Oh, it was canceled. That's why. It was canceled because of quorum. So I guess I will just make a reminder that responding to those Google Calendar invites is super important so that they can identify whether the meeting needs to be rescheduled. So, all right, moving on to item 2 for public comment.
Jillian, we're having a hard time hearing you here at the office.
Okay, is anyone else having a hard time hearing me?
It's very faint, but I can hear you.
Okay, Should I speak louder? Is this working
Okay.
well enough?
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. No, I apologize for any difficulty hearing me. I simply called the meeting to order and reminded everyone about responding to the Google Calendar invite, and then tried to move on to item 2 for public comment. Is there any public comment?
I did not receive any. I don't believe Dan has any either.
Okay, great. Then we'll move on to item 3. Acknowledge receipt of a presentation regarding the potential renaming of the Cold Springs and Bordertown interchanges on US 395.
And as we're getting ready to jump into that meeting, I just want to note that David and Ben Miller are now in the meeting.
All right, am I good to go?
Yes, sorry about that. Thank you.
It's all good. Let me share my screen and get the presentation going. Let's try this. All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Okay, now we'll start the PowerPoint and see if it still works. Did it work still? Oh, it went. It's not the one I want. One sec. Let's see, change it. Okay. Is it still? Is everybody able to see it?
The US 395 proposed interchange name changes. Yes.
Perfect, cool. Okay, so sorry about that. I'm never very good at sharing screen. So my name is Alex Wolfson. I am the engineering manager for the Nevada Department of Transportation District 2 office. Yeah, it's kind of funny because I'm giving this presentation, but I'm not necessarily the one pushing it. But I wanted to do a quick presentation, and it seemed like the RTC, CMAC, and TAC meetings were a good opportunity to discuss kind of an idea we've been floating around. And this idea is potentially changing a couple of interchanges, the names of the interchanges on a couple of North Valley's interchanges on US 395. So we'll get right into it. So where is this coming from? So next year sometime, NDOT has a project. I put the word tentatively because I never believe it until it's actually there. But if everything goes according to plan, we should have a project next year to repave US 395 from the California-Nevada state line to just south of the Cold Springs interchange. This would be a classic mill and fill repave of US 395 and some of the nearby frontage roads. Other improvements on this project include upgraded deer fencing, fiber installation, and sign replacements. And it's part of those sign replacements where this all came. So one of our designers was looking at this and asked an interesting question. She said, you know, this area is becoming, you know, and I'll get to it in a second, but, you know, this area is becoming very urbanized. Is Cold Springs and Bordertown the, you know, appropriate names for these interchanges? And so we started kind of talking about it, and we did actually think that, you know, there might be some reason to look at this. You know, as you can see, these are the new proposed designs. So currently, exit 80 is called I think it's actually Cold Springs Valley, and then exit 83 is Bordertown. So our proposal would actually rename them to what their official street names are, which would be White Lake Parkway and Village Parkway. As you can see, we plan on to try and reduce confusion. You know, we would actually keep the old names as like secondary location plaques, and then, you know, as time goes on, we can evaluate if we still need those down the road. But we don't want to totally abandon it because we know that, you know, this can cause some confusion initially. So, but the big reason is why, and I think everybody on here knows, urban development is pushing northward. The North Valleys has been developing significantly, and the Cold Springs Valley appears to be kind of the next big area. We've been seeing a lot of residential development on the east side of 395 in the Cold Springs area for decades now, and it's still going. And in addition, I'm sure everyone's heard of the Stonegate development. That'll be on the west side. That is officially City of Reno annexed land. And that's going to be a 5,000 unit development. And at that point, we can now say, okay, look, the City of Reno limits are now up there all the way to the state line. This is truly an urban area. You know, way back when these interchanges were named, it was rural. I think this freeway, I don't have the year off the top of my head, but it's pretty old. I think it's from the 70s or the 80s. It's been around for a while. So it was Cold Springs was a much different place back then. So, you know, we're the big reason we're looking at this is that, you know, traditionally urban interchanges are named after streets. You drive around through Reno, Sparks on I-80 or 395 or 580, you'll see that, you know, it's normal names, Vista Boulevard, Plum Lane, that kind of stuff. We generally do the spots for rural interchanges, like Patrick or Mustang or Cold Springs, Border Town, you know, those kind of ones. And so, you know, we find, because when you look at maps, you know, you get off at what's actually White Lake Parkway, but the exit's called Cold Springs. I don't know if people actually realize that they're actually on White Lake Parkway, which can be, you know, troublesome if they get into a crash or something. They may not be able to actually relay to like 911 where they are. And generally it can be helpful for people who are not familiar with the area, because, you know, Google's going to is going to give you information as to what road you need to turn on. And so in my opinion, you know, our interchange names need to match. And I think that's kind of the big part. And so, you know, we kind of looked at this as, you know, the character of this area has really changed. You know, maybe this is a good opportunity to change the names. So I kind of next steps, you know, nothing's official yet. I want to emphasize this. We just started discussing this. We really wanted to solicit as much feedback as we could. We wanted to, you know, make sure that this isn't, you know, that we're not missing something, or that this really is a terrible change. So we're trying to solicit feedback from partner agencies, businesses, residents. You know, obviously we're going to actually meet with the Border Town Casino and let them know of the change, you know, and we don't want to surprise anybody. We do think it's a good change. It's accurate. You know, it's something we're probably going to look at some other kind of suburban areas on the outskirts of town. Verdi is a good example. There's literally 4 interchanges, all called Verdi, west of Reno. It's very confusing. And so, you know, but we're trying to take advantage of this existing project. And so, you know, very, very curious on opinions, feedback. You know, please feel free to if you know, have any comments you'd like to share, concerns, feel free to email me. I'll pass it along to the project team, and we'll definitely take everything into consideration. We're still fairly early, but we wanted to start this process early. And we didn't want to surprise anybody. We didn't just want to come out the next day and just change the name of the interchanges. So that was pretty much all I had. It was meant to be a pretty short presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, this is Paul Malachowski for the record. Alex, I've read recently that there is a nationwide shift in typeface from the type of lettering and numbering that we've seen all over the United States on highway signs. And I think there's either one is highway Gothic that's going to be changed, or it's something else that's going to be changed to highway Gothic. And I don't know if you have encountered that yet, but it seems to me on 395, those signs are going to have to be changed at some point in any event because of this uniform standard typeface that's been developed. And I've been seeing it around already, you know, here in the Truckee Meadows. So if, you know, instead of sending a crew out to change signs later, while you're doing this, you know, sealing and resurfacing, this might be as good a time as any. And that's perhaps more of a statement than a question. But if I can put it in the form of a question, Alex, that's a Jeopardy pun, put it in the form of a question. The question is, do you see any reason why you would not want to get a conforming typeface up there for your highway signs, regardless of what the content of those signs are?
So I'm really glad you made that statement / question, and I agree with you. There's been some significant standard upgrades to signs. The font has changed. In addition, over the years, we've actually now specified sign sheeting that is more retroreflective than previous. And so you hit the nail on the head. It has now been our policy on our repaving projects to replace all signs within project limits, because like you said, it's a good time to do it. We're already out on the road. We've got a contractor in place. It makes it cheaper. And even if the content wasn't changing, kind of like you said, even if we were keeping these 2 interchanges changes, the exact same names. We were already we were gonna change those highway signs because this newer sign shading, it looks better. It's easier for drivers to see. There's better retro reflectivity. It's much clearer, doesn't require as much illumination of the signs either. And so we're trying to move forward. And unfortunately, I mean, you know, I'll be the first to admit 395's got some old signs that need to be replaced. And so it's badly needed. And we're trying to make sure that's a part of the scope of almost all of our repave projects moving forward. Because in a perfect world, we should be trying to replace signs every 10 to 20 years anyways.
I have a question, Ann Silver for the record. You know, as head of the Chamber of Commerce, naturally, I assume Border Town Casino or whatever it is will have a problem with the change of sign because probably many people wouldn't know it's there unless the sign pointed to it. But I'm really fascinated and happy to hear you'll be asking the residents because I think they're the people who really matter. They're getting off at those exits. I can't think of a time I've ever gotten off either one of them and probably never noticed the signs. But I think residents are really critical to this process, just like we've volunteered our time. I think people who live in that part of the community need to weigh in, and their feedback should be given extra weight because they're the residents who live there and get off those exits all the time. And maybe they don't want to change it. Maybe it's confusing. Maybe they've given people directions for years, and now they're going to have to tell people a different manner and form to get to their homes. But I'm glad to hear NDOT will pursue feedback from residents.
Thank you for the comments. I definitely appreciate that. And then that was our big thing is, you know, we don't want to make this more trouble than it needs to be. I think we have reasons for it, you know, whether they're good or not could be debated, but you know, I think we want to make sure that it seems reasonable. I think we're trying to just kind of reflect with updated standards. And like you said, it's very important, you know, we're planning on doing some more outreach with Washoe County in the future as this gains some steam. And this is why I thought it was a really good opportunity to kind of do this initial presentation because I can get some good feedback. And we definitely anticipate Bordertown probably won't be super thrilled. It is one of the reasons though why we do want to keep the old name still as a secondary plaque to not totally remove it. You know, we do have to wait too, and that's something else that was kind of part of the discussion. We're technically not supposed to be, you know, advertising commercial, you know, casino businesses along the highway, and that gets a little dicey too. And I'm not saying that's the reason we're making this change, but it is kind of one thing that came up as well. Somebody was like, that's an interchange named after a casino. And normally, you know, when you see those kind of things, you kind of see the loophole, like for example, Nugget Avenue, it's an actual street. So it's like, we almost need like a border town road, but I appreciate the comments.
Are there any questions or comments for Alex? And keep in mind, you can email your comments to him as well. All right, hearing none. Is there a motion to acknowledge receipt of the presentation regarding the potential renaming?
Jeff Bonanno, I move to acknowledge receipt of a presentation regarding the potential renaming of the Cold Springs and Bordertown interchanges on US 395.
Thank you, Jeff. Is there a second?
Mark Miranda for the record. I second the motion.
Thank you, Mark. All those in favor, please say yay.
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 All opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, everyone.
Moving on to item 4, acknowledge receipt of a report on the 7th edition Regional Road Impact Fee, RRIF, General Administrative Manual, including the RRIF Capital Improvement Plan.
Thanks, Jillian. Dale Keller is here and he will be doing that presentation.
Good evening. That was a mouthful, Jillian, but you got it right. So good evening. My name is Dale Keller. I am one of the engineering managers here at the RTC. I want to thank you for the opportunity to present in front of the CMAC tonight and discuss the update to the Regional Road Impact Fee Program and then why we are undergoing this effort. So before we jump into the why is just to give a little bit of background of what we're doing. So first off, what is the Regional Road Impact Fee Program, or RIF, we like to call it? So all new development creates additional demands on some or all public facilities provided by local governments. So if the capacity of those facilities is not increased to satisfy the additional demand, the quality of the public service for that entire community would be deteriorated. So in our case, impact fees were developed as a funding tool to recover those costs of those increase of those capacity of public facilities to new development. So when a new development comes online, this is as an example, a single family resident multi master plan community comes online, we as the collective agency or regional body collect those impact fees, and in order to build new capacity improvements in the region. A little bit furthermore, we are guided by NRS, particularly 278B. With that too is this is all done by the local governments enacting ordinances. This occurred back in the mid-90s that allowed us to implement this impact fee. Likewise, we are all entered into one interlocal cooperative agreement between the city of Reno, city of Sparks, Washoe County, and the RTC to establish this regional road impact fee. And then we have two guiding documents that are being updated today. The first one is the Capital Improvements Program or Plan. It describes the methodology used to establish that net cost per service unit of new roadway capacity. And then we're guided by the overall manual to help us administer this program. So why are we here and why am I doing this presentation to you today is in accordance to that interlocal cooperative agreement. The RTC is responsible for initiating periodic reviews of our RIF program. And so this review process was initiated by the approval of our long-term 2050 Regional Transportation Plan, or the 2050 RTP, that you received presentations earlier this spring. It was adopted earlier this spring as well by each of the local agencies and the RTC board. And so we use this transportation planning tool to define the capital improvements plan by and attributes to new development in each service area. And in addition, we have a committee, a separate RIF TAC that helps us guide us along this process to bounce ideas off. That includes members of the Planning Commission, members of the private industry, as well as representation from each of the local entities. So we reviewed this process initiated by the 2050 RTP, and then this helped us guide what's in that capital improvements plan to contribute to new development. And I won't get in too much depth or too much of the weeds and calculations, but here's the overall steps that we took to do so. This is all in conformance with the TMRPA and the land development, which includes that consensus forecast of population employment, also the Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County's master plans. We take that information, as you've seen before, we put this into an RTC travel demand model under RTC planning that helps determine two things. What's needed in the regional transportation, what that long-term plan is. Also understanding the new trips on the regional road network. So how much is that growth occurring and where is it actually occurring at? So we step in the blue, we break this into the first 10-year plan that by service areas, which we'll touch upon, we'll develop this cost per VMT, and we'll develop at the end of the day what that fee per land use would be. So what is a VMT? VMT is vehicles mile traveled. NRS requires that these capital improvements for demand of these facilities better be measured in a service unit. And we use, in our case, we use those VMTs, or those vehicles miles traveled as our standard measurement to create that link between supply and demand. Supply in this case is the roadway capacity versus the demand of the traffic generated by new development. So we combine this and we understand what these vehicles, how far these vehicles travel.
Dale, can I interrupt for one moment, Ann Silver, for the record, and just ask you, is there a multiplier based on the average number of cars per household? I mean, I live in a neighborhood where there are 3 or 4 cars in every driveway.
That is a very great question, Ann. And the answer is yes. So we use the US Consensus Bureau they have a American survey, I'll touch upon that in a second, that tells us how many, they take the survey, telling us how many single households have a number of vehicles in their household. So that it is taken into account. So we talked about the VMTs, and we also take a look at what the RTP says in the first 10 years. And here's a snapshot, and everything you see in yellow and purple would be capacity added roadways to our network. This is the same what you see in the 2050 RTP plan. So this is just a screenshot of that plan. And we take a look, the RIF capital improvement plan takes a look at that first 10 years of the RTP. And one thing that we're required to do, these impact fees must be based on a reasonable size of area in order to show the benefit of improvement or a rational nexus. One of the NRS provisions was updated to reflect that entire city from being within the same service unit. We used to have a service unit just in City of Reno, but per NRS, so it has to incorporate more than one city or entity. So as you see here, we have a north service area and a south. That dividing line is broken up on the I-80 corridor there. This is getting a little bit into the calculation aspect of it, but I think it's important to share. For the next 10 years, we anticipate that RIF share is over $130 million. And that is broken up into where the eligible improvements of the RTP is. You see the percentage in the north and south. And then at the bottom row, you get into what is that dollars per VMT for both of those service areas. And this guides us to the last part of this equation of the overall fee schedule. So once we determine that dollars per VMT per service unit, then we develop this RIF schedule for the designated land uses. So you see single unit, multi-unit, industrial, commercial, and office and other spaces. So we use the average daily trips that's identified in these ITE trip generation manuals. Very technical, I apologize, but these are inputs that we use to help draft this proposed fee schedule as shown. So how does this compare to the current 6th edition and what's changed in the 7th? Once again, we've show that the 2030 vehicles mileage travel per development unit has increased. And once again, that takes into account that travel demand model, what's being forecast through TMRPA, as well as the master plans by each of the local entities. Our program or our capital improvement plan or those projects reflect what's in the 2050 RTP. So once again, it ties back into our regional plan. And as you saw previously in those percentages, that these fees, and we see more growth reflected in that north benefit area. So we're seeing more growth in the north than in the south. And lastly, to answer Ann's question, we've seen that vehicle data was updated based off the US Census Bureau for the American Community Surveys, and that reflects the 2019 survey that was performed by the census. So what are the next steps for adoption? In August, we had the RIF TAC recommend approval by each of the local participating agencies in RTC for this adoption. We will present this very similar presentation to the RTC board here at our September meeting on the 17th. Next then allows us to go to the planning commissions in October. And then lastly, we'll go to the city councils and the county commissioners in the November-December timeframe. Since this is a change to public ordinances, it's our hearing, so we have to go there twice. And then we're looking to adoptions in January 2022. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that the committee might have.
I have a question, Ann Silver, for the record. Dale, do you anticipate any resistance to these proposed plans before either Sparks, Reno, or the Washoe County Commissioners?
So a lot of efforts gone into this. It's been over a year process that we've initiated this update. And we vetted a lot of the different changes that came out of this with each of the staff of each of the entities, as well as the private development community and planning commission. So what's great about this RIF technical advisory committee that we meet every month is we have representation from each one of those different entities. So we've fleshed out any of those issues, and we do feel that we have an acceptable product or acceptable update for each of the entities.
Good. Okay.
This is Matthew Bogue. I've got a question. So is it possible to use these funds to do multimodal improvements? Let's say there's a development in the central core of the city where maybe there are fewer vehicle trips anticipated. What do you think about that?
So Matthew, that's a great question. So multimodal is a tool for capacity in our roadway systems. It takes vehicles off our roadway network. So that could be a consideration as we look into that capital improvement plan. You'll note that through our document, multimodal improvements are acceptable ways for the cover RIF fees for.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I just didn't read the whole report. So
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul Malakowski, for the record. Dale, I just did a word search for the word maintenance on this item 4 report, and I'm not clear on when you take in the RIF funds. Is this strictly for capital improvement or the actual maintenance of the infrastructure? Because if you get a new house and it's going to use X amount of road miles over a period of time, once you've built the road, you've got to maintain it. How is that accounted for? First the infrastructure expense and then taking care of it.
Good question, Paul. So the RIF fees are collected strictly for capacity, and that's defined by NRS. And that shows what the impact of the existing facilities, our regional road network, has based on new development. So we have to show a correlation on what that capacity-driven need is based off new development. Regarding your second question about maintenance-wise, those funds and the overall system is covered under our local fuel tax or state fuel tax or another type of funding sources that allow the cover for those maintenance expenses.
Okay, so the assumption is that new subdivision, Stone Ridge or whatever it's named, comes up with 5,000 new residential units and a corresponding number of vehicle miles. Those vehicle miles are assumed to generate a certain amount of fuel tax, and that fuel tax then is going to take care of the maintenance end of this. You guys are collecting funds on the front end just to get that additional capacity funded, correct?
That's a very good way to describe it.
Okay, just so I'm clear on that, I don't worry so much about electric vehicles pretty much screwing up calculations on how much gas tax is going to get collected, but it does seem to be a trending thing. And, I see more and more of them around, and I'll tell you, my next new vehicle will be an EV. So, for whatever that's worth, people may want to start looking at alternate maintenance funding sources, really. And we don't have that on the agenda today, but that should come up at some point, before you let 5,000 new homes get built, I think. Anyway, thank you, Dave.
No, I completely agree. I know that could be a great future topic that I know at the state level and the regional level that is being currently looked at.
Are there any other questions for Dale?
this is Matthew Bogue. I've got one more small, maybe. So currently Reno Sparks is divided into 2 service areas. I'm just curious, is there any thought or want to in the future to make even smaller areas with the goal of keeping the service fees within the same community?
Matthew, another great question. So that was discussed early on where you would have a different, you could call it like an urban core benefit district One thing that the committee came around to was that the RIF fees are intended as a regional program to address new trips on the whole regional network. So the committee felt, and I think staff felt as well, that due to the size of that community, the trips across all those boundaries would feel that the current system that you see on the screen between north and south captures that trip generation on a regional road network. So that was previously discussed, but overall the recommendation was to keep it the same. But those are things that we'll continue to look at every 2 years.
Thank you.
All right, any final questions for Dale? All right, can we get a motion to acknowledge receipt of the report on the 7th edition Regional Road Impact Fee General Administrative Manual, including the RIF Capital Improvement Plan?
Ann Silver for the record. I can't remember everything you just said, but I would make the motion to accept the
Acknowledge
report.
receipt of the report.
Thank you. Receipt of the report.
Thank you, Anne. Is there a second?
Jeff Bonanno, I second.
Thank you, Jeff. All those in favor, please say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you, Dale. All right, we're about halfway through with these reports and presentations. So moving on to item 5, acknowledge receipt of report on the Center Street Multimodal Improvements Project update.
Thank you. Maria Manis is, Paz Fernandez is the project manager, and she'll be doing a presentation on this. Sorry, Maria.
No worries. That was my former last name. Good evening, everyone. My name is Maria Paz Fernandez. I am very grateful and honored that you have me here tonight to present to you the Center Street Multimodal Improvements Project update. You are okay with my screen being shared? You can see it, correct? Sorry, I didn't check. Thank you. So I wanted to start with this Center Street project, cycle track project. What are the goals? What are we looking to solve? Because every project is a solution to an identified problem, a possible solution. So with this project, we have safety, connectivity, and accessibility goals to solve. We want to provide a high quality bicycle connection between the University of Nevada, Reno and Midtown. That way we can close the gap in the core cycling network. We will be improving safety for all modes, diversifying transportation options, not only for bicycles. We will have pedestrian improvements, also as road improvements, because we will do in some corrective maintenance, which is the asphalt pavement on Center Street. As many of you might notice, there are some sections that need to be repaired, as well as sidewalk replacement for ADA compliance. There are some areas on Center Street that are missing sidewalk. Project background. This project was identified as a need to the Virginia Street Rapid project process. This project, the Center Street project, is included in the 2040 RTP, the Bicycle Pedestrian Master Plan, and the Complete Streets Master Plan. Back in 2019, there was this bicycle facility alternatives analysis for Center, Sierra, and Virginia Street. And that study resulted in the RTC and the city of Reno selecting the two-way cycle track on Center Street as a preferred alternative. So I inherited this project. I became the project manager, and in 2019, I think around September, we started the design and we added some additional scope to this project. It's not only going to be a cycle track on Center, we were also include signal replacements, pavement rehabilitation or corrective maintenance, and sidewalk reconstruction. So the project scope and limits. Center Street cycle track. It starts on, let me see if you can see my cursor. On Mary or Virginia Street in the south, all the way to 9th Street in the north to connect Midtown to UNR. However, we identify some potential risks with taking some travel lanes and parking, especially on the Midtown area. So we had to reduce the limits, per se, of the cycle track to Moran Street, all the way to 9. We added the pavement rehabilitation north of the Truckee River and the sidewalk replacement north of 5th Avenue, I believe. This is a rendering of the corner of Center and 2nd Street. This is what the vision of the project would look like after it's constructed. You can see the two-way cycle track on a one-way street, divided or separated using sometimes candlesticks, which was the preferred alternative, and a roll curb to separate vehicles from the bicycles. And we will include traffic upgrades, and like I said, some corrective pavement on the asphalt and some other sidewalk improvements. So when we started this project, we had a few concerns about how taking one lane on Center Street was going to affect the operations on Center. So we analyzed the intersections. We also look at loading zones. Some casinos, some businesses have loading zones, so that was a concern. And like I said, how this lane reduction, lane capacity reduction will affect the operations on Center Street. And the results, surprisingly, were acceptable for the city of Reno and on Center Street. We have achieved 30% design plans, and like in any project, we also discover some challenges, and there is going to be some challenges at the off-ramp on 8th Street, operational, traffic, backups, safety concerns that we might have. We can address those, but we need the City of Reno and other entities or other agencies on board with our solution, our proposed solutions. We have some concerns for traffic operations at Center and Liberty. I think there is a bus stop on the Discovery Museum, so it might be a little bit of a bottleneck. The existing parking spaces, we're going to be impacting downtown. We also have to work with the fire department because they have a minimum code for the width, and that's the reason why we were, in some cases, using the roll curb to separate the traffic from the bicyclists, and sometimes the candlestick, which in many cases, it seems like there's more, serves us more protection. And definitely more stakeholder engagement. The casinos, all the businesses in downtown need to be involved, need to be part of this process as well. And with that, I just wanted to a little bit shift to a concept that was recently brought up to our attention as we were developing the 30% plans on Center Street. There was this opportunity to look at Virginia Street, and we are able to implement possibly a cycle track on each side of the road along with the traffic and separated by a roll curb, and in some cases by candlesticks. There are some operations, some impacts that will happen. For example, the travel lane for the vehicles will be reduced to 10 feet, and that will automatically reduce the speed of the vehicles on Virginia Street. That will be like unintended consequence of implementing the cycle tracks on each side of the road on Virginia Street. But it is a possibility. So that was brought up to our attention, and it wasn't on the table before. So we had to take a look at this closely, and we are to make sure that we're actually providing the best possible solution, the best possible alternative to provide safe, protected bicycle facilities in downtown. So what are the next steps? We will continue the community engagement with this project. As I said, we were looking at the Virginia Street protected bicycle facilities. We're going to do new updated counts this month, and we will update our analysis. We use pre-COVID counts 2019, and we were asked by City of Reno to update those counts with 2021 counts, and where the unit in September, which University of Nevada, Reno is fully operational, and we can get a better idea, a more accurate representation of what's happening in the corridor on Virginia Street. And additionally, the City of Reno and RTC Planning are working together to execute this downtown Virginia Street urban placemaking study. Mouthful. And after that study, I was told that it was going to be in probably 6 months, we will get some kind of results. That study will guide the next steps for us, whether or not is it feasible to do protected bike lanes, bicycle facilities on Virginia Street, or shall we continue with the design as we have been of the Center Street cycle track? And
I have a question. May
Go
I
ahead.
interrupt? Maria Ann Silver for the record. Excuse my ignorance, but you must have studied what the volume is of bicycles going back and forth on Virginia Street. I mean, I drive that very frequently and I don't see a lot of bicycles. I'm all for bicycle tracks and I think it's great and it saves carbon emissions and more people should walk and bike, but I didn't know that that was a huge demand for Virginia Street for UNR students who might often travel in groups of more than one person on a bicycle. So I guess you have definitive proof that there's a large volume of bikers that need two different bike lanes.
so if you recall, thanks for the question, and I appreciate it. This project was not demand needed. It was more so as a vision needed, I think. And that's why we need this downtown study to provide us with a vision of the downtown Reno, as of whether is it going to be a pedestrian zone. I heard some comments or suggestions that, you know, it should be close to traffic. It should be just be pedestrian and bicyclists. It'll be a plaza. There's so many options, and I think that will help us guide the future of this possible two projects. So there's another thing happening north of 8th on Virginia Street. RTC built a shared bicycle lane and bus lane, and then there's this missing gap between 8th Street on Virginia Street all the way to probably California or Liberty, which the most recent project, the Virginia Street Midtown, was completed, and they added shared bike lanes and traffic and vehicle lanes. So it's called sharos. So there's this gap. There's in the core, in the midtown, the downtown area, there's no bicycle facilities. So logically, the community has been asking, hey, we have to have some kind of continuity. So at the beginning, a couple of years ago in 2019, we thought Center Street is a feasible, easy way to close that gap. However, in recent discussions, Virginia Street is looking very, very possible. There's this big possibility to also have bike lanes on Virginia Street, protected bicycle lanes. I think the bicycle community feel safer with some kind of protection, a physical separation from the vehicles, which is very understandable. And that's what we're trying to accomplish here. You know, like I say, safety, connectivity, and accessibility.
I'll just make one more comment, Ann Silver, for the record. I think you hit the nail on the head. There's no real vision for what downtown should or would or could be. Will it be a pedestrian mall? Should it be for bicycle, for more opportunity for bicycle riders? You can't widen it, so the traffic will always be relatively slow. Should there be a separate bus lane? And in actuality, how many people are downtown? So I'm just interested in what all this gets based on, because I sit on a lot of different advisory boards, and for the last 10 years, I've never heard the definitive vision for downtown. So it sounds like you need that before you make your plans. And yet I don't know what that vision is. It's debated and discussed, and there have been plans, over plans, and depending on who's in office, things change. So I feel for you. I think you're doing a great job presenting to us what things might look like, but I've never seen the 5 or 10-year plan for downtown that's actually materialized.
You're correct. And I mean, when I started this project was called the Center Street Cycle Track. Now we're open the window of opportunities to explore other options that were not on the table a couple years ago when RTC did the study for alternatives for bicycle facilities on Sierra, Virginia, and Center. So, but at the same time, we are responsible for every penny of the gas tax dollar that we spend in projects. So it will be very disappointing to spend so many millions on a project where the vision of downtown is a different vision, and our project won't fit with the vision, and it'll be really sad and more so disappointing. I think as a taxpayer, I will be very disappointed that that money was wasted on something that we should have thought, get more analysis and be more responsible with the funds that we're in charge of.
This is Laura Azam. I just have a couple of, I guess they're comments more than questions to you, Maria. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Loud enough? Okay. One is the 2-foot bumpers. Those are really large. I know Midtown, I don't know if those are the 2-foot bumpers, but when they have events where they block off Virginia Street and have the tinting and they have pedestrians walking and that type of a thing, those are really hard to put tents up on. They're hard to walk around. There is a lot of problems with those, I see. And also, if you ever do projects with the rounded curbs, my mother fell really bad on one during the rib cook-off. Downtown Sparks has those on Victorian, and you can't tell it's a step. It just blends in with the sidewalk and the road area, and they are dangerous. I have seen several people trip on them, and my mom fell real bad on her face. And so I just wanted to comment on those two things to take into consideration. And another thing is I've heard a lot of complaints from drivers with the Midtown project and the large bumper, I guess you call it the islands, the way they have those large bumpers on the side, and it's very wide and they can't turn. They have to go down and around the islands to get back going the other direction. And I just think those real large areas, weren't conducive. So those are just comments. I would just like that kind of taken into thought.
I do appreciate your comments, Laura.
Yeah.
So I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Thank you.
When we were talking about what's the vision for downtown, one of the options is, okay, well, there's sometimes Virginia Street gets closed for special events. So if we're going to build this protected bicycle facility on Virginia Street, what's going to happen? then so, there's going to be some kind of commitment or direction or the vision of what downtown is going to be utilized for in order for us to move forward. Because I personally believe, and I'm sure like the majority of people will agree with me, that if Virginia Street is going to be closed for special events, then we will have to provide another alternative, another route, a detour, if you want to call it like that, for bicyclists to travel, to move around. So, because otherwise we won't be solving the problem of connectivity because Virginia Street will be closed and won't be accessible for bicyclists. So that's one consideration. And I just want to make a note of that. The other thing you talked about was that roll curb, and yes, I hear you. So just to clarify, that roll curb is going to be between the bike lane and the travel lane. So it's going to be separating the traffic from the bicycles, not the bicycles from the pedestrians. The pedestrians will be on the sidewalk, and it's not a roll curb, it's just a regular curb that separates the pedestrians from the bicyclists. So that's something else to consider. I do hear your concerns about a rolling curb, and I did have bad experiences with those as well. So I totally understand your concern. And then the other comment that you made was about the medians, the islands that separate Midtown, and that makes difficult for cars to maneuver. This is a very, it's similar, but not the same. I don't know if I can explain myself good enough on that. This roll curb is easier for cars to navigate. And actually that's approved by the fire department because they have these big trucks and they prefer those roll curbs so they can drive over it. Now, the roll curbs, like I said before, is going to be separating the bicycles from the vehicles. So the vehicles are not, there's not going to be islands in the middle or medians, raised medians. That's not the case on Virginia Street. So, and whatever there is a space to have left turn pockets, those will be preserved. Left turns will be allowed on Virginia Street. Now we are analyzing the operations because, excuse me, it's only one travel lane. So it'll be shared left, shared through. So that will probably create some backups or delays, and we're looking closely at those, and that's one of the reasons, another reason why we're doing updated counts this month. So I hope I addressed some of your comments, and if you have any other comments, please don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Thank you.
Are there any other
This
questions?
is Paul
for Maria?
Malakowski for the record. May I ask Ms. Paz Fernandez a question, first of all, regarding special events? Would there be any conflict with any special events if the Center Street bike route, as already discussed in great detail by this committee and sent to RTC, which was approved and was supposed to be completed in the spring of 2022, would any special event interfere with that route?
And to answer your question, well, number one, thanks for bringing this up. We did, I should say, the project, we did, our team, we analyzed the operations on Center Street with Virginia Street closed, meaning because we had concerns about additional vehicles on Center Street when Virginia Street is closed for an event. And we did the counts during Hot August nights, and the level of service, they still perform at acceptable level of service D or better per city of Reno. So yes, to address your concern, we looked at that analysis. We analyzed every intersection on Center Street with Virginia Street closed during Hot August nights, which is one of the events that draws a lot of vehicles on Center as well as Sierra in the downtown area.
Well, maybe you didn't understand my question. My question is, would a special event on Virginia Street, and I will tell you just from personal experience earlier this summer, I tried to get an event which was going on at the same time on Virginia Street as the Pride Parade. And I can tell you that bicycle travel on Virginia Street was just completely impossible. And I had to go up Center Street to get to my destination. Do you think that Center Street is not a better alternative than Virginia Street, considering the number of special events? And they appear to be increasing in number. When I moved to Reno, there was no Pride Parade. Who knows what special events will occur on Virginia Street going forward. Honestly, I don't see Virginia Street as a viable alternative. And I have a couple other questions and comments about that. But tell me once again how Center Street would be adversely impacted by a special event occurring on Virginia Street that would impede bike travel, as the Center Street design that's been approved would allow bike traffic.
So I don't have an answer to whether or not Virginia Street is not going to be closed for events. As of right now, it is being closed for events. So we analyze the existing condition. If Virginia Street is closed for events, Center Street cycle track, how it operates, and it operates at acceptable levels of service. Now, I think your question is whether or not City of Reno will allow the closure of Virginia Street, and I don't have that answer, but that's why City of Reno and RTC are working together to develop this downtown placemaking study to see the future of Virginia Street. So I think I cannot answer that question of like the Virginia Street is going to be closed or not. It doesn't depend on me. You know, I think it definitely it's a key question that needs to be answered in order to move forward with either Virginia Street by protected bicycle facilities, for the reasons as I stated before. If we build these bicycle facilities on Virginia Street, and the street is closed every other week for special events, then what happens to those facilities? We need to provide an alternative bicycle facility. So whether or not is the best alternative, we don't have the answer yet. We are looking for the answers after that downtown placemaking study.
Okay, last question for now, Ms. Paz-Fernandez. Isn't it true that this placemaking initiative is at the behest of the casinos, collectively known as the Row, which was raised by letter by their attorney dated November 30th, 2020, basically suggesting that Virginia Street would be better for them if they had more bike traffic going up and down Virginia Street, as opposed to the existing planned and thoroughly discussed by this committee Center Street alternative.
And I hear you. And I mean, if that study was actually, it would be nice if the Row was sponsoring that study. As far as I know, as the City of Reno and RTC sponsoring that study for the vision of the downtown corridor, I think definitely the Row, the casinos, the businesses in the downtown area are the main stakeholders of this project. And I mean, we need their participation and their opinion, and we need to hear them. We need to listen to them, because I mean, you know, I wish I was a better bicyclist. I'm not. I'm a chicken, and I do, and I think that's why I feel for this project, because I do want to provide a safe, protected bicycle facility, and that's one of my personal goals. I'm not comfortable riding a bike on a bike lane, you know, just painted, or a share like on Midtown. I wouldn't. I'm a chicken. I wouldn't do it. So I do feel more protected when there is a physical barrier, physical separation between bicyclists and vehicles. So I don't think that's the case. I truly honestly believe that City of Reno and RTC, they have the bigger picture, the good intent to move forward with this downtown placemaking study. Granted, I am not the project manager of that study, so I cannot give you a lot of details. All I know is that RTC is collaborating with City of Reno. I was promised, I was told 6 months and we'll get some kind of results. I am very interested to hear and to learn about those results because it directly affects the project that I'm working on. And as a project manager, my goal is to get this project done, so.
All right, but Paul Malakowski again for the record. When we get to item 7 regarding new agenda items, I'm going to be sending a link to a August 30th Reno News and Review story about this. I am thoroughly opposed to changing the Center Street Bike Project route and the engineering and all our work on this committee that's been done on it. And I'm going to suggest that we, as the CMAC, make it clear to the City of Reno, the row casinos, and the RTC that we would like to maintain the current Center Street bike project as designed and as implemented to date. And that's all I have with Ms. Paz Fernandez. I think she came into this project belatedly. I don't think she was with us when the CMAC spent several meetings going over all the alternatives. And many of you who were on this committee in years past remember we talked about Sierra Street, we talked about Virginia Street, we looked at Center Street and we said, yeah, it's a little more expensive, but boy, it's really going to serve the bicyclists, university students, everybody going up and down through downtown, through Midtown, through the university, and to some of the main transit centers such as 4th Street, and now, as Ms. Paz Fernandez points out, the one at 8th and Virginia. This whole placemaker thing sounds like a solution in search of a problem. And I will get back to this in item 7. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any other questions for Maria? Do we need to give more time for debate or do we want to move on? Keep in mind that there are opportunities to make various rulings and motions based on agenda items. But the next move here would be to acknowledge receipt of the report on the Center Street Multimodal Improvements Project update. All right, so is there a motion to acknowledge receipt of the report?
I'll make the motion to acknowledge receipt of the report presented by Maria Paz Fernandez. Thank you. Ann Silver for the record.
Thank you, Ann. Is there a second?
This is David Jockerman. I second.
David seconds. All those in favor, please say yay.
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 All opposed, please say nay.
Paul Malakowski, nay.
Paul Malakowski says nay. Are there any other nays? All right. I do believe that given the amount of yays, we still have the motion passed. I don't know if there's an opportunity to make the, just in terms of a point of order, I'm not sure about Robert's Rules of Order close enough to motion with the comments that Paul presented, but I'm sure that we'll review those in the minutes as well.
Yeah,
So-
Julian, to answer your question, this is Rebecca for the record.
Yeah.
The meeting is being recorded and Maria's taken notes and there will be minutes of the meeting. So the report was just to accept the report and the motion did carry, but Paul's comments are on the record.
Right. I guess my question is whether we can provide motions on reports that there's no opportunity to amend reports in any way, right?
Oh, yeah. So the item is agendized to either accept the report or not accept the report. And you can actually, provide comments now, or you can provide them an email to Maria at a later time. but that's what the agenda item is as.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so moving on to item 6, acknowledge receipt of a presentation on the Lemon Valley Spanish Springs Connector Alignment Alternatives and Planning and Environmental Linkages Study Draft Report.
Thank you. And Dan Dunges is on, and he will be giving you the presentation.
Hi, everyone. I am actually in the room at our first work conference room in the office today, so that's why I have my mask on. And can everyone hear me okay? Okay, great. I'm going to share my screen for my laptop. I can't use my voice or my laptop audio because you'll hear horrible feedback. So just start this up.
We can hear you just fine though.
Great, thank you. I'm showing presentation mode on my laptop, but I don't know if everyone else is seeing that. Oh, there it goes. Just a little delay. Okay. So I'm here to bring forward an overview, a presentation of the Lemon Valley Spanish Springs Connector study. This is also what's called like Planning and Environmental Linkages Study, or a PEL for short. This was brought before the committee during development several months ago, but we do now have a draft report that's available for public review. And we will be bringing this to the RTC board at their September meeting. So just a quick refresh, because it's been a while since this has been before this committee. The purpose and need of this study was to look at a connection between two growing areas, which of course is North Valley, specifically Lemon Valley and Spanish Springs, and to improve regional traffic circulation and access, as well as the emergency evacuation and response. There's some pretty remote areas up there, particularly depending on which alignment, which I will go through the alignments here shortly, but kind of up by the Reno Sparks Indian Colony in the Hungry Valley area. Some additional goals that came out of this were to hopefully formalize access to some recreational opportunities. There's a lot of BLM land up there, and right now it's kind of a free-for-all, and so there's concerns about some of the environmental impacts of some of the recreational uses up there. To look at potential expansion of public infrastructure. So if a new corridor were to be constructed, we would also look to see what other utilities could be within that corridor footprint to provide services to some of those more remote areas. Also was looking at economic development. This is something that the Reno Sparks Indian Colony expressed interest in early on when we decided to embark on this study. And then to look at specifically on existing Eagle Canyon Drive, look at safety and operations improvements. So the context of this study, I think a lot of people early on were maybe a little misinformed, thinking that we're looking at where to put a road in, and this is kind of the next step. We're just going to start moving dirt in the next few years and building this brand new roadway. Really, this is something that's a lot higher level overview, looking at even the feasibility of a project. It's kind of what a PEL study is. And just to remind everyone that there are several other projects in the city that are currently being advanced. They're either in various stages of design or actual construction has begun. Not the least of which is improvements on Pyramid Way and also Lemon Drive. So the growth in these communities is expected to continue. And we do update our regional transportation plan every 4 years. And with that, we update our travel demand model. So we're continuously trying to get the most recent land use data that's available to us, looking at, employment, population growth, and obviously there is a lot of development that's continuing to happen up in both the North Valleys and Spanish Springs. So we're, every time we do an update to our plan, we're doing an updated analysis, and we'll continue to monitor the relevance of this particular study. And where we landed for now is looking at 3 different potential alignments that would move into the NEPA process, which is really more of a full-blown environmental study. So just a little context on the vicinity. What you're seeing is a dashed line that represents kind of the general area where we're looking at. There's a lot happening there. We have the county, we have City of Sparks, we have City of Reno, the Reno Sparks Indian Colony land, and of course there's what's not really shown on this map, but BLM is a big land owner up here as well. So a lot of different entities to work with. We did do a preliminary environmental screening. Some of the things we looked at were kind of the flora and fauna, the native species that are within this vicinity, trying to identify any, species, I guess, that critical avoidance areas, those sort of things. Looked at environmental justice considerations, some of the demographics in the area, and minority and lower income populations. Looked at land ownership, as I just kind of referenced earlier, plus existing parks and recreation facilities. And then not least of which, we're also looking at water bodies and wetlands. There is a lot of water up here. You just can't see it all the time. So with that, trying to avoid some of those more critical areas, we came up with these 3 potential alignment alternatives. And these are really just pretty much lines at a map at this point, very planning level, high level concepts. No design work has gone into any of these yet. What we're hoping through the next aspect of the study, the next step of the study, is to really narrow down to one particular alignment. But we've kind of gone through the process. We've reached out to the residents, our RTC partners and stakeholders, including the Reno Sparks Indian Colony, and kind of presented this before them. And these were the 3 that we are looking at potentially advancing. And this is really distilled down from, I don't know if you recall, but there was about, at one point we had close to a dozen different alignments that we were looking at through our modeling efforts. And so just real briefly, let's see, put my cursor on the screen here. This kind of started off as the study we actually started with Eagle Canyon Extension. And that was really just kind of what was thrown out there initially as a place to connect to existing roadway in Spanish Springs. So we did end up looking at that, but in retrospect, realized, that might not be the best solution. So we kind of branched out, and that's kind of where we got to these higher level, magnitude, kind of looking at different alignments. There's also one coming off of Shawnee Road, which is further north. As a kind of an alternative, would come through Hungry Valley and then connect over to Lemon Drive as well. And I do want to point out that, if one of these roadways were to be built, we wouldn't try to tie in directly to Chickadee Drive. It's not a very wide road for one, but for two, there's residences that front that road. And so we'd really be looking at some sort of a realignment there. And then we also looked at a southerly route coming off of Lazy Five Parkway and over to connecting in somewhere in the vicinity of Deodar Way off to Lemon Drive. Switching gears a little bit here. So we looked at safety and operation improvements on existing Eagle Canyon Drive, as I mentioned earlier. Again, there's a lot going on here. There's 2 schools, there's 2 parks. So there's, surrounded by a residential neighborhood. And so the project team came up with 6 different recommendations for just improving the safety here. it's kind of probably hard to see on the screen, but we're looking at adding a median refuge island here. As you can imagine, there's a lot of kids that are walking, riding bikes, getting to these schools here. We have a middle school and a high school. Improving this intersection here with the park with some improved lighting. It's really not a lot of lighting around there, so at dark it's hard to see not only people, but cars coming in and out of the intersection. Extending the shared youth path to the north. So there's currently one that goes to about Shaw. We want to extend that all the way up, basically toward Calle de la Plata here by the Spanish Springs High School. And then just doing some general striping improvements. Some of these roundabouts, there's a kind of confusion that we witnessed when we were out there doing field observation on the approach on some of these. Adding curb and gutter along both sides of the roadway. And this is really meant to be kind of to deter cars from kind of parking in an area where a lot of kids are walking and biking. It really takes up all the space. And then just general ADA improvements throughout. A lot of these ramps and sidewalks are a little kind of substandard, and so they need to be brought up to compliance. As far as outreach, we did have a project technical advisory committee made up of different stakeholders that I mentioned. And so we met several times throughout the development of the study. It was kind of right in the heart of COVID. And in fact, that's why it's a little bit more delayed than we had initially hoped. But so we did end up doing a virtual meeting on our project website. And there's a kind of a video that kind of goes through all this. And then we did a lot of kind of outreach through our media partners. We have a Road Ahead news segment that I recorded. And of course, our e-news that we circulate every month. And really, that's kind of where we're at. Like I said, this is available for review now, but I'd be happy to answer any questions, take any comments.
Dan, this is Ann Silver for the record. Just a quick question. Going back to that map where you showed the potential alternatives, wouldn't you rather avoid the many issues that come up with the Reno Sparks Indian Colony regarding sacred land sites and their dwellings? And I used to work for them and I know that area well. I would think that long yellow line would be preferable to cutting across an area that is very much used by the Reno Sparks Indian Colony residents.
Yeah, and that is a great question. And we did talk extensively with them, kind of a little later in the study than we had wanted. But they actually, at least staff initially, seemed very interested in this idea before we even got it kicked off. As a way to kind of maybe spur some economic development that they're looking for, as well as some infrastructure improvements. Yeah, and so I think really to your point, you know, I don't know that we've gotten a definitive answer one way or the other. The tribal council was not opposed to a route through there. Obviously, with careful consideration of all the points you raised, I think there's probably, you know, their community just like any others. So there's probably some mixed feelings about it, you know, and supportive or against it. One of the other things they pointed out to us was, you know, they are pretty isolated when there is a potential wildfire event or something like that. You know, the residents don't have a lot of options as far as getting out of there. So they were looking at even improvements on that existing Hungry Valley road would really benefit them. So that,
yeah, I mean, they've had a history of wanting people to stay off their lands, and you really don't, that's not actually a public road that goes to the colony headquarters in Hungry Valley. But I'm happy to hear you've worked with the tribal council, and you know, if you've worked with the chair, tribal chairman, Arlen Melendez, he's a very rational, reasonable man. And if it's to spur economic development, I get it. That would be terrific.
Yeah, yeah. So, and again, this is just kind of the very first step. You know, once we kind of move along, we're really going to have to dive into those details. We're going to have to, if one of these alignments that is selected that goes on Indian County land, we're going to have to really do our due diligence to make sure this is something that the community as a whole wants and accepts, and we kind of do it by their rules.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Dan about this report? Can I get a motion to acknowledge receipt of the presentation on the Lemon Valley Spanish Springs Connector Alignment Alternatives and Planning and Environmental Linkages Study Draft Report?
Jeff Bonanno, I acknowledge receipt of the, or I move to acknowledge the receipt of the presentation of the Lemon Valley Spanish Springs Connector Alignment, blah, 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 report.
Thank you, Jeff. Can we get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Anne. All those in favor, please say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion carries. Moving on to item 7, member announcements / agenda items for future CMAC meetings.
Hi, everybody. Paul Malakowski again, for the record. You've heard my general comments and position regarding this Virginia Street alternative to the Center Street Bike Project. I'm going to ask that at our next meeting, the committee as a whole consider an agenda item basically to the point that this Virginia Street alternative should be scrapped, and that this committee should direct the RTC, the city of Reno, and anyone else involved in this to proceed with the remaining 70% of the engineering that needs to be done for the Center Street project and complete that project at the earliest possible opportunity. One of the RTC board members, who is also a Reno City Council person, Neoma Jordan, in 2019 said that this project could be completed as early as the spring of 2022, which is only several months away. And she had hoped that it would be even sooner. Now, admittedly, she's not an engineer, but the materials that I will send to the mailing list in support of this agenda item between now and the next meeting will set forth all of the reasons why Virginia Street simply is unworkable, and basically that in sum total, the Center Street project has been the subject of years of deliberation and involved constant cooperation among the city, RTC, and the Bicycle Alliance, who I do not speak for. But 3 engineering studies have determined it's the best option for a safe, direct link between UNR and Midtown. And this is why my comments earlier in this meeting have been to the point that it is only when the Row Casino Group decided to directly contact the RTC with this new idea that does not have engineering support, and indeed our own engineer who presented today says, well, we don't know enough about Virginia Street to actually implement it, whereas there's a whole lot that's already been done, and there's obviously a path forward on Center Street. But you folks will receive an email from me on this in sufficient time to ask questions, and hopefully we can deliberate on the agenda item that seeks the action that this committee simply seeks scrapping the Virginia Street alternative and continuing on with Center Street. Thank you.
Paul, if I may, this is Dan Dengis for the record. And I did want to, I guess, just add on to what Maria was saying, that this whole Virginia Street placemaking study is not really a study that's transportation related. You know, I know you can't really do placemaking without consideration of transportation improvements, but it's really a separate effort that is not directly tied to the Center Street project. And I don't want to I want to keep us on focus here, so I don't want to deliver anything. But what I was going to offer is that perhaps maybe we could bring an item to present more information on what that separate study is about, just for the committee's understanding and information.
Paul Malakowski again. When you read the August 30th Reno News and Review article that I will link all of the email recipients with, you will see that this Virginia Street business was initiated by my colleague, Mike Pagney, on behalf of the Row Casinos and has absolutely nothing to do with a general downtown plan and has everything to do with getting more bikes in front of their properties on Virginia Street and basically scrapping our Center Street project dead in its tracks. And there's no reason for further delay on it. We have already gotten this far on Center Street. It's going to work. There's no parades or special events that will get in the way of anything that's already been drawn and partially engineered on Center Street. And any reasons that suggest that Center Street is a worse alternative to what may or may not ever occur on Virginia Street simply ignores the 3 engineering studies that says Center Street's the best. So I would like to keep it as an action item and I will present it as such.
Okay.
Wonderful, wonderful. This is Jillian. I just wanted, as a point of order, to reiterate, Dan is voicing that you might have an opportunity to present to the group, and I know you feel passionately, and I think we all admire your passion, and obviously you have a lot of information to share as well. So as an additional, just speaking as a member, I'm looking forward to hearing more about that from you. I'd also like to say that if anyone in the group who doesn't feel that they're aware of the cycling community's the background on this, they can go to bikewasho.org, sign up for their newsletter and look at their blog for some past information just to educate yourselves in the meantime as well. Are there any other member announcements, agenda items for future CMAC meetings?
This is Jeff Bonanno. I just had a quick, maybe a question here. I was curious about if the roundabouts at Legends were private property or if they were part of RTC, NDOT, the city of Sparks, because I wanted to just kind of voice the concern on how the signage has always been very confusing. And I've heard from many drivers about how just the signage as to like which lane to be in for the roundabouts can be very confusing, especially to out-of-towners. And I've seen many almost collisions because of the way the signage is. So I wasn't sure if this would be something that would be brought to the city of Sparks, whoever's in charge of Legends or whatnot.
Yeah, hey Jeff, this is Dan. Just again for the record, I believe City of Sparks is responsible for, they own them and maintain them, but I will try to chase that information down for you and get back to you on a follow-up.
This is Matthew Bogue. I also have some concerns about the roundabout, as a geometric perspective, how the lanes go through. So I would agree that that's a good future agenda item.
Okay, yeah, I will talk with our engineering staff and we could probably give an update on that.
Okay, any other member announcements, agenda items? I don't believe there's there's no motions there. Any RTC ride access staff items?
Hi, Jillian, it's Rebecca. For the record, I have 2 announcements. One is that the rib cook-off just got kicked off today and goes through Monday, and RTC is offering free rides to the rib cook-off on the Lincoln line and also Route 11. So just wanted to let the public know about that. And second item is that the mask mandate by the TSA has been expanded through January 18th of 2022. And so that means that on all of public transit, they will require masks, and in our stations, masks will be required at least until January 18th of 2022.
Thank you, Rebecca. Is that all of the RTC ride staff items, access staff items?
I think so. I kind of asked beforehand and nobody had anything unless they do now. Thank you.
If I can just say, Rebecca, I appreciate getting those updates because we publish them for all our Chamber of Commerce members. And there are at least 87,000 people employed by our members. So word gets out. So thank you for sending those to the Chamber, or whoever sends them to the Chamber.
I believe that's our Community Affairs, Michael Moreno's group, but I will pass that on. So thank you.
Yeah, I know, Michael. Thank him for me. I
I
appreciate
will. I will.
That was Ann Silver for the record.
Sorry, Ann Silver.
Can I get a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Jeff Bonanno, I move to adjourn the meeting.
I'll
Thank
second
you,
Ann
Jeff.
Silver.
Jillian, I'm sorry,
Seconding.
Jillian? Point of order, I don't
Oh,
think
sorry.
there is any, but I think we need a call for public comment one last time.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. I didn't go to the second page of
No worries.
the agenda. My bad. All right. So before we get there, is there any further public comment tonight?
I have not received any. I don't know if anyone's downstairs with Dan.
Nope.
Okay.
I didn't realize you were still here.
Sorry, there's no public comment in the
Oh.
room there?
We're good.
Okay, okay, thank you. All right, so again, we're gonna, sorry about that. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting tonight?
Jeff Bonanno, I motion to adjourn the meeting, please.
Thank you, Jeff. Is there a second?
Mark Miranda, I second the motion.
Thank you, Mark. All those in favor, please say yay.
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 All opposed, please say nay. All right, the motion carries. Thanks to our new members for joining us tonight. The meeting adjourns here at 7:08 p.m.
Thank
Have
you.
a great night, everyone.
Thanks, good night.
Good night.
Yeah.